morning, everyone. Welcome to today's study call. We are most likely going to finish up our study of Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend today. I hope that you've enjoyed this study of this book. Now, this book, let's see, it is 105 pages long, and these pages aren't very big. And we've just spent, I think, the last 21, 22 days of study going over this. And so you really can spend quite a bit of time going into these books and really studying them, really trying to get out what these authors, these people are trying to teach us. And a lot of it is just very valuable information. So again, I think I've mentioned this before, that oftentimes when I want to study a book, or I've had a book recommended to me, I'll often read through it first, and somewhat quickly going through it, trying to understand the basic ideas and concepts of what they're trying to teach, to get a basic gist of what it is that they're saying there. And if I find that it's valuable information, if I find that what they're saying is something that's resonating with me and it's something that I want to go more in depth in, I'll often go back and make a study of it and take my time to go through it and to learn a little bit more as I'm going through. And that study has been and is very helpful to me. And that's kind of what I'm taking you on in this call. I'm kind of giving you maybe a little bit of an insight into my mind, in the way that these things are going on in my mind, because as we're reading and as I take those moments to make these little sidetracks and talk about these different ideas, that's often what I'm doing as I'm reading through it. I'll read through a paragraph, or I'll read through a sentence, and then I'll think about it and think about what I know and how this fits in with kind of the framework in my mind of what I believe and the way that I see the world. If it's differing from that, I try to see if I can understand where they're coming from, to maybe see if maybe they're just saying it in a way that I'm unfamiliar with, but is really the same things that I understand, or if it's something different and new. Try to analyze it and see, is this a better way of thinking about this than what I previously have? Or is what I previously have just, false? Is some negative belief or false belief that I'm holding on to that I just didn't realize, or that, I believed it to be true at the time, but now with greater experience in my life, I realize that it's not. And so, again, as we're finishing this off today, just remember these kinds of ideas, that you can really spend a good amount of time in these books to really gain and pull out of them these great concepts. Now, as I mentioned, I would let you guys know on this study call today what we're going to go into, and we're going to go into The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Now, this was one of the very first books that I came across and did a study of that talk about these principles of mental science. And I think that it's a very great book. It's something that's a little bit more well known. This book by Genevieve Behrend is a little bit more obscure. As a man, or The Science of Getting, The Science of Getting Rich is a little bit more well known. It became popular with just different teachers out there that studied it, and then they taught it, and then they taught it to their students, and so on. And then it was the book that heavily influenced the movie The Secret. And so if you are a lover of the movie The Secret, and the stuff that Rhonda Byrne has done, then you'll understand the things that she taught as we go through a study of that. But let's dive into this, and then we'll finish it off today. Now, having lifted up your feeling to the central idea of this meditation, you examine your own consciousness to see if there is aught which is unlike God, if there is any feeling of fear, worry, malice, envy, hatred, or jealousy. Turn back in your meditation to cleanse your thought through the affirmation that God's love and purity fill all space, including your heart and soul. Reconcile your thought with the love of God, always remembering that you are made in the image and likeness of love. Now, I had I've not just one, I've had multiple experiences where I've applied the feeling of love. Now, I've applied it in different ways and through kind of different exercises, and I teach a lot of these exercises. in my addiction recovery programs to help us really resolve a lot of the negative feelings and difficult things that are going on to us, where we can come to a sense of peace, a sense of love. But really, my first kind of idea that I came across and really incorporated into my being with this idea of love was I was listening to a mentor of mine, and he was talking about this idea of love. And the scriptures say that God is love. And the scriptures also say that we are his offspring, that we are his children. And we've been kind of talking about this idea here too, that this creative power that is behind everything, that we are an offshoot from him, that it created us, and that it created us as a creative center. So if you want to call it the universe, if you want to call it God, whatever you want to call it is not really that important, but that you recognize that you are an offshoot of it, and that you recognize the general attributes of what this power, this source is, because whatever powers it holds, you also hold. So if it is one of love, then you are also love. And so this was the idea that my mentor was expressing, that if God is love and we are his offspring, then we are love too. And so if we are love, then love is not something that we need to go out and get from any other person. It's not something that we need to try to obtain by the machinations that we do from other people, but it is something that we are, and we can just express it to other people. And if it's something we are, we never need to worry about running out. We can just express it. And my mentor also said, and this was like a dagger to my heart, that if we didn't feel like we were love, if we didn't understand this true concept that we were love, and if we weren't coming from a standpoint of just expressing that love for others, that we would often go out and we were manipulating other people into giving us love back. That if we felt like we didn't have love and we needed to get it, that we were manipulating others to give that love towards us. And I realized that I was doing that. I was doing it on a subconscious level, but once my mentor brought it to my attention, I began to see that I was very much doing that with all of the relationships in my life. I was trying to set up circumstances and different things so that other people would tell me I was worthwhile, for other people to tell me that I was loved and that they cared for me. And upon realizing that, I was horrified. I was horrified that I was manipulating other people, because I myself, I hate being manipulated. And the fact that I was doing that to somebody else, even on an unconscious level, horrified me. And I took immediate steps to remedy that in my life, to where I was no longer manipulating other people into giving me that love. And my relationships did change. That when I found that I was, instead of trying to manipulate other people into loving me, but instead just express love to them, more often than not, I felt love from them. Now, it was many years later where I came across the idea of advocating and expressing love on a purely and deeply profound level, that I truly came to understand more about this principle of love. That's a story that I'll save for another day. But there's a lot around this idea of love, and understanding that we are in the image and likeness of this creative power, this creative force, whether you call it God or the universe or nature, whatever you want to call it. And so because we are in image and likeness, we have this love, and it's something that we can go in and express. And we never need to feel fear, worry, malice, envy, hatred, or jealousy like she was talking about. Keep this cleansing thought in mind until you feel that you have freed your consciousness entirely of all thoughts and feelings other than love and unity with all humanity. Then, if denials do not disturb you, deny all that is unlike your desired manifestation. This accomplished, you almost overlay your denial with the affirmative thought that you are made in the image and likeness of God, and that you already have your desire fulfilled in its original spiritual or thought form. Now, this idea that she's expressing is that if we are an offspring of God, and that we are an offshoot, if we are a part or a portion of this creative unit that's bigger than us, and we are a smaller unit, that we do have access to the resources of this larger unit. And that as we create something in our mind, we are creating it on the spiritual plane, and that we have it. And if that's not even true, at the very least, everything that God has, we have access to. And so if it's something that maybe we're not necessarily creating, but we're making an impact upon the universe, God, or whatever, for something that is already created, for it to flow to us, this same process is the way that we do to obtain it. Now, my own personal feeling is that we do create something. We are a creative center, that we're not just asking for blessings and the benefits of some being or some force in the universe, but that we are actually a very creative center. Closing prayer. Prayer is a method of thought, is a deliberate use of the law, which gives you the power of dominion over everything which tends in any way to hamper your perfect liberty. You've been given life that you may enjoy it more and more fully. The steady recognition of this truth makes you declare yourself a prince of power. So hold that thought in your mind, that you are ever increasing, that you're going towards more, and you hold that thought in your mind so that more and more can come to you, and that you can feel more and more blessing. You recognize, accept, and use this power as a child of a king, and hence dominion is your birthright. Again, if we are the offspring of God, if we are the offspring of this creative power, then we have the birthright to inherit all that this king, this God, this power has. Then when you feel the light of this great truth flooding your consciousness, open the floodgates of your soul in heartfelt praise, that you have the understanding that the Creator and his creation are one. If you are his creation, then you are a part of him, and you are one with him. Also, that the Creator is continually creating through his creation. So it's kind of like the idea that if you were to, say, make an instrument, like a musical instrument, now, the making of that instrument would be a creative process. It would be a creation. But even after you create this thing, then you can then create more things with it. You can create wonderful music through this instrument. And that's kind of the idea with us, is that we are an instrument that God has created for him to create through, for him to experience life through. And that if we enter into that creation, one of the things too is that he's also given us free will, so we don't have to follow the way God has created us in a way to express that creation, and we have the choice of whether we express that creation or not. Now, let's say, just as an example, that God created us as a trombone, and we want to go out and be a drum. Now, we can't be a drum because we're a trombone, and so trying to be a drum is going to bring us all kinds of woe and failure and just negativity in our life. But if we learn to accept and embrace what God has created us to be, we can create some wonderful things. In the example of the trombone, if you realize that you were a trombone and you fully embrace that and learned about the music that you could create as that, you could create wonderful things. And you could enter into the harmony of the creation that everybody else is creating. And so, yes, you may not be a drum, but you can add flavor and power to what the drummer is doing, so that you become this orchestra that's creating this wonderful creation of this life around us. Close your treatment in the happy assurance that the prayer which is fulfilled is not a form of supplication, but a steady habitual affirming that the Creator of all creation is operating specifically through you. Therefore, the work must be done perfectly. The work must be perfectly done. Your mind is a center of divine operation. Now, this is, I think, a thing that many religious people don't really understand, but the scriptures do actually talk about this, is that prayer isn't for us to, so to speak, connect with some higher being. I mean, that it does do that, but the purpose of it is for us to focus and hone our creative power. It's for us to recognize and bring ourselves into realization of our own nature, because the scriptures say things like that God already knows that what you're going to pray. And before you've even prayed, he's already answered the prayer. So if God already knows and he's already answered the prayer, does he even need you to pray it? No, he doesn't, but we do. Because if we don't pray the prayer, then we don't make the creation. We don't create the changes within us. We don't enter into that creative process. We don't exercise that faith. And if we don't, then the prayer goes unfulfilled, meaning that God has already answered the prayer. The resources and everything for your prayer has already been answered. It's already there, but you haven't done your part to enter into it. And so again, I want to read that statement. Close your treatment in the happy assurance that the prayer which is fulfilled is not a form of supplication. So we're not pleading with God to give us something that, and trying to convince him. He's already convinced. He's already answered the prayer. But it is a steady habitual affirming that the creator of all creation is operating specifically through you. So we're trying to convince ourselves of this idea that God is working through us. Hints for application and practice. For every 5 minutes given to reading and study of the theories of mental science, spend 15 minutes in the use and application of the knowledge acquired. So this is an idea. Now, whether you spend 5 to 15 minutes in that ratio, I don't think that there's any magic in that number. It's just something that she's put in here. But we do want to put into application what it is that we're studying, what it is that we're learning. Because if you don't put it into application, you can read all the books you want and you're not going to get any results. And so a lot of people that enter into these kinds of studies, that go to courses, that go to seminars, that learn from teachers that teach these kinds of things, and then they have no results. This is the biggest thing that I've seen and that I've even experienced myself, because once I have done what's required of me, even after learning these things for sometimes years, a principle that I studied for years and I never saw anything from it, but then I finally applied it. I finally used it and made and created for me some way to apply it in my life. Then I saw the power of the principle. Then I saw the changes that these teachers, these people that were telling me would happen, finally happen in my life. And so the idea that she's expressing, that we don't see any results until we apply it, is true. The ratio of 5 minutes to 15, I think that you can figure out what works for you. Spend 1 minute in every 24 hours in conscientiously thinking over the specification that must be observed in order to have your prayers answered. Practice the steady recognition of desirable thought possession for 2 periods of 15 minutes each and every day. Not only time yourself each period to see how long you can keep a given conception before your mental vision, but also keep a written record of the vividness with which you experience your mental image. Remember that your mental senses are just as varied and trainable as your physical ones. Now, whether you spend a minute to 15 minutes to an hour on these, the longer that you can spend in building that image in your mind, the quicker it is actually going to come to you. Because the more you build it in your mind, the more you're going to impress it upon your subconscious mind, and you're going to reaffirm and convince yourself of the idea that you have created this, and then it will come to you in your life. Spend 5 minutes every day between 12 noon and 1 o'clock with a mental search for new sources of wealth. So constantly be looking at your environment, looking at the things around you and seeing the blessings that God has blessed you with. That these are very good applications. The time frames you might have to adjust depending on the time that you have, but the more you can put into these practice and these applications, the more benefit that it's going to be towards you. Remember that the greatest mental scientist the world has ever known, Jesus Christ the man, said all things are possible unto you. And we're just going into chapter 17. Sorry, I forgot to preface this. Chapter 17, things to remember. Also, the things I do, you can do. Did he tell the truth? Jesus did not claim to be more divine than you are. He declared the whole human race children of God. By birth, he was no exception to this rule. The power he possessed was developed through his personal effort. He said you could do the same if you would only believe in yourself. A great idea is valueless unless accompanied by physical action. God gives the idea, man works it out upon the physical plane. So we've talked about this idea before, that oftentimes these very successful people were going about their idea and then they were hit upon by some kind of inspiration, some idea that took hold of them, and they entered into creating that idea into a reality in their life, and that was God working through them. Now, what she's saying here is true in that Jesus Christ said that statement that greater things than I will ye do. And so do you believe, I mean, you look at least the record of the miracles that Christ was able to perform, and that Christ is saying that you could do greater. Do you believe that? And are you actively seeking in your life to test and prove that that is true? Are you seeking to do greater things than Christ? And I'm not saying that in a way to that you're trying to put yourself above Christ, or that you're trying to make yourself more than him, but I'm saying that you're trying to prove Christ true, that you're trying to prove his statement true, that greater things that you could do. Are you developing that faith every day that you could do these things? I know that I am trying to. A lot of times I struggle and I strain and I don't always succeed, but I'm always striving. I'm always trying to move and do more. All that is really worthwhile is contentment. Self-command alone can produce it. The soul and body are one. Contentment of mind is contentment of soul, and contentment of soul means contentment of body. So you may or may not realize this or know this, but you actually have the ability and the capacity to command and control the emotions that are going on in your body. And so he's saying here that, or she's saying here that contentment is really what we're going after, is really what's worthwhile, and that self-command alone can produce it. So it's kind of this idea of happiness that I think is akin to what she's talking about, which we often talk about in our modern day, that we just want to be happy, that's what we're going for. Well, you can choose at any moment and at any time to be happy with what you have, and you can express gratitude for that, which is going to increase your happiness. And so by increasing your happiness and by expressing these things through gratitude, you can then create an inflow towards you of even greater blessings, which then is going to increase your happiness. And that's part of the process of what we've been talking about here. If you wish health, watch your thoughts, not only of your physical being, but your thoughts about everything and everybody. With your will, keep them in line with your desire and outwardly act in accordance with your thoughts. And you will soon realize that all power, both over thoughts and conditions, has been given to you. You believe in God, believe in yourself as the physical instrument through which God operates. Absolute dominion is yours when you have sufficient self-mastery to conquer the negative tendencies of thoughts and actions. And so do you pay attention to the thoughts that are going on in your mind? And if you're trying to create something new in your life, and you're holding that vision in your mind, and you're having that uplifted emotion in your heart, are your actions supporting that? Because if we, as I've talked about many times on this, those are the three components that we have to get in alignment to manifest what we want. So we have to have the vision and the uplifted emotion, and then that creates the spiritual creation. Then God brings us the opportunities, and then we have to take action upon those opportunities. So our actions have to be in alignment with that vision and that uplifted emotion. We have to go into those actions with that vision and with that uplifted emotion as we're going about them. Are you doing that? Oftentimes, I think that that's another failure that many people fall prey to when they're studying these things, is that it's very easy to have a wonderful thought, and it's very easy to feel a wonderful emotion, but it's sometimes difficult to go out and do the work required. But we need all three of those parts: the thought, the emotion, and the action, all in harmony with each other. And then we will manifest what it is that we're seeking after out in our environment. Ask yourself daily, what is the purpose of the power which put me here? How can I work with the purpose for life and liberty? If we can enter into the spirit of the creative power that is flowing through and in us, and create the things that it is asking us. Remember, I talked about that many wealthy people they felt this inspiration of something that they do, and they entered into the spirit of doing that thing, and then God blessed them so wonderfully. So ask yourself, what is God trying to work through you? How can I work with the purpose for life and liberty in me, as she puts it here? Upon having decided these questions, endeavoring hourly to fulfill them, you are a law unto yourself. If you have a tendency to overdo anything, eat, drink, or blame circumstances for your misfortunes, Conquer that tendency with the inward conviction that all power is yours outwardly. Eat less, drink less, blame circumstances less, and the best there is will gradually grow in the place where the worst seem to be. So we need to govern the appetites of this flesh. We have this body that we've been given, and we need to kind of instruct this body, us as this consciousness, as this intelligence that's living through this body. We need to train it and we need to teach it. And if we're not doing a very good job at it, then our life can get out of whack. Our life can go off the rails. And if you are having struggles with any of these, I highly recommend you go to my website and you join one of my programs, whether it's live or whether you're going through the personal study program, so that you can get these things in order. And I have lots of resources to help people that are struggling with these kinds of things, because until you get these things in order, it can be difficult to manifest and to create these kinds of things in your life, because those negative habits are working cross currents with what it is that you're trying to create oftentimes. Always remember that all is yours to use as you will. You can if you will do. God the Father blesses you with all he has to give. Make good, godly use of it. The reason for greater success when you first begin your studies in demonstration in mental science is that your joy and enthusiasm at the simple discovery of the power within was greater than you have been able to put into your understanding later. And with increased understanding, put increasing joy and enthusiasm, and the results will correspond. All right, that's the end of this book, Your Invisible Power. I hope you have enjoyed this study with me. I've enjoyed teaching it. I've enjoyed going through this book again and remembering the things that Genevieve Behrend taught and just reinforcing these principles in me. Because as I'm going through it, I'm mentally analyzing myself too, thinking, can I tweak this? Can I do better here? Am I applying this principle successfully? And it's a mental checklist for me to say, oh, I can do better here. Oh, I think I'm doing good here. Well, that's great. I'm glad I'm seeing the results of it. Let's keep doing more of that. And so I appreciate you taking the time to study this with me, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to teach this to you, because when I teach these things, it is of a benefit to me as well. So we'll go ahead and end our study of Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend there, and we'll end our study call there as well. And again, tomorrow we're going to be going into a study of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. So until tomorrow, go make yourself a wonderful day.